Hey folks, I'm here from Velo Performance. Welcome back to the podcast, and if you're new, welcome. I hope you get a lot out of this podcast. Now, the whole object of this podcast is to interview experts in their field and also interview people that will inspire you to do more as you get older. And my first inspirational guest will, I hope, really inspire you to do more. I coached Andy Peterson last year to ride 2,500 kilometers in a week, taking on a challenge to raise as much money for charity. And we talk about our coaching, what he did in training, and some of the things that he came up against that we had to work with, and also what we think is important to look at as you get older. But also we're talking about what he's taking on next year, and this is an even bigger challenge. He's taking on the transcontinental. So without further ado, let's get into it. So look, Andy, welcome to the podcast. Really good to have you on board. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get into what you've done in the past with me and what you're doing in the future.
Okay, thank you. Well, from a cyclist perspective, I am 56. I cycled like most of us did as a kid, just loved the freedom of riding around on a bike. Then I played rugby until I was about 40. Played my last game in South Africa when I snapped my Achilles tendon. And then I started cycling. And cycling again in South Africa was great because the weather's great, lots of sportifs. So you were able to not just get into riding, but there was an organised structure that you could slot into, which culminated with the Cape Argus cycle race in March, which is about 35,000 competitors every year. So that was always the target for the year. Great fun, great weather, really, really enjoyed it. And then moved back to the UK and again started doing some rides, some sportifs and various other things, including the Spring Classics. So I started getting into riding the sportifs for the Spring Classics, which are a bit crazy. Things like the Tour of Flanders, which was 270k and a lot of climbing and a lot of cobbles, and Paris-Roubaix, which suited me. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which nearly killed me. And you and I did Milan-San Remo that year. In fact, yes. Doing it, and then you took a look at it and said, "Oh, I really fancy that." And the next thing I know,
you kind of inspired me to do it more than anything else. I was like, "Oh, I fancy giving that a crack."
Great fun, great fun. So really, really enjoyed it. And then during lockdown, I had one of these lockdown ideas because I raised money for a charity called Fortitude, which is dedicated to curing bowel cancer. And my father died of bowel cancer. And Fortitude started off. We did cycle challenges, and it's a great charity because it raises money for specific projects at St. Mark's Hospital in Harrow. So when you donate, you know exactly where your money goes, and we run it like a business in many ways. So the hospital will pitch projects to us, we'll decide which ones make the most impact, we'll work with the doctors, and we produce real results. And the doctors used to join us in the cycle rides, and that was great fun. So raised quite a bit of money for that, raised 10,000 when I did Milan-San Remo, for instance. And then during lockdown, I just had one of those lockdown ideas. I wanted to make a big impact for Fortitude. I wanted to raise some big money. And my father's from a place called Ardnamurchan, which is the most westerly part of the UK. And we were up there staying in a holiday house up there. And I'm thinking about what I can do to raise some serious money. And I'm chatting away with my kids, and they're basically goading me as well. Well, you got to go big, Dad. You got to go big. So I came up with the idea, because Ardnamurchan is the most westerly point in Britain, I wanted to finish a ride there. And therefore, because I wanted to finish there, it would involve compass points. So I thought, well, if I go through all the 4 compass points of the UK, if I go to the most southerly part of the UK, or the British mainland, which is Lizard Point, I then go to the most easterly part, which I found out was Lowestoft, and then the most northerly part, which is Dunnet Head, and then finish in Ardnamurchan Point. So that was the initial idea. I then quickly, fed that to map my ride and realized that's 2,500 kilometers. I'm like, okay, that's a long way. And then I'm thinking, well, if you want to raise big money, you have to go big. You have to get people going, basically, bugger me. That is impossible.
So, Andy, tell people, like, how many days were you going to do this over?
Well, that was the thing. So 2,500 to raise money for charity. Man Rides Bicycle for Charity is not a unique proposition these days. Mm-hmm. So I realized that I'd have to do it pretty extreme. So in terms of just round numbers, 2,500K, I thought, okay, 1 week. So that's about 350K a day. When Mark Bowman broke the world record for cycling around the world, he did 350K a day for 79 days. I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll do it for 7 days. So that was the idea, and I would do it unsupported. So no help, no vans, no cars, nothing with me, just head off. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And the idea didn't go away. And then you make that big commitment, which is you start telling people. You say, I'm going to do this. And once you tell people, it snowballs and you can't go back. So that was about the summer before. I had about a year, I reckon, to prepare for it. And I knew there'd be a lot of preparation in terms of route planning, but also, obviously, you and I worked very, very hard on the fitness. Yeah. But planning was going to be really important. Nutrition, extremely important. Logistics, etc. And just speaking to people who are in the ultra endurance world. Because at that point, when I told people this, and actually Mark Bowman was the same, because they look at me, if I'm not training, I'm 100 kilos. If I train, I'm about 95, 96. And if I really train, I'm about 90, right? So I'm carrying, a chunk of weight in the bike. And I'm reasonably fit. It's not that I'm hugely fat or overweight, not at all. I just happen to have inherited a farmer's frame and played rugby all my life. So
you're an ex-rugby player, so you've got that rugby build still. You're a strong man in that respect from your physicality. So how tall are you? So people like listening to okay, you get to 90 kg, but how tall are you?
So I'm 5'11".
Right. Okay.
I'm not super tall. When I did a session with a pro in South Africa, and he measured my weight and body fat, and I was 99 kilos when I went to him, but I was 19% body fat. So I said to him, so even if I had zero body fat, I would still weigh 80 kilos. He said yes, essentially. So my frame, initially people looked at it and said, you've got no chance. In fact, I was speaking to a friend of mine in the village here where I live yesterday, and he's a professional athlete. He's full-time cyclist, triathlete, and he looked at the route with his coach when I told him about it. He didn't tell me this at the time. He only told me yesterday. He looked at the route with his coach, and his coach basically said, "That's impossible." He said, "Who is this guy? Is he a pro athlete?" He said, "No, he's just a guy who lives in the village." He said, "Well, he's got no chance. He's got absolutely no chance."
Well, I think we proved them wrong there.
Yes. Well, it's at the time when I started it off, I genuinely didn't know whether I could do it. I'd never ridden the 350K in a day. I'd ridden 270. I'd ridden Liège-Bastogne-Liège Sportif, which is 270K and 4,500 meters of climbing. It took me 14 hours and nearly killed me. I had to walk up some of the climbs. Because I realized at that point, first of all, I had the wrong gearing on my bike, which didn't help. I was riding an 1125. That wasn't good. Yeah. But the second thing was I'd done a lot of training. I'd put miles and miles and miles in, but I didn't have enough strength.
Yeah.
I was really feeling it. I just did not have the strength on the hills at the end. So I didn't know whether I could do 350K a day. And I knew that I would have to think differently about training, because just going out and riding wasn't going to cut it, along with then the route planning and the nutrition and everything else. But I knew I was going to have to change the way I trained. And that's what you and I talked at the beginning. And I was quite surprised when you gave me this weights, it was a very weights intense training program.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, from my experience and we're similar age, is the fact that I know that if alongside a really well-structured training plan on the bike, if you stick strength training in, it just makes you super robust. It helps you keep pushing power out when you're getting tired. You just need to look at the science behind it and realize that it's how you capitalize on being able to keep riding longer consistently over time. And people consistently ignore it. So when you took me on board and was like, look, what do we do? As you say, it was like, well, really, we're going to do that much strength training? I was like, yeah, we have to. And it just made you super durable and very strong.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, we did a lot of volume, but we also did some structured training. So we did lots of hill reps. We did some VO2 work because that's important to try and work on that. And I remember you saying, look, what's this got to do with riding long all the time. So you need to work on all the different aspects of physiology, because we lose it as we get older. But if we can make you very robust as a cyclist, which is exactly what we did, it just makes you, or gets you into a position where you can just ride long.
Right.
And you know, I quite like it when people eventually turn around to you at the end of it and say, well, there's no way I thought you could do that. And they don't tell you until after the event. I was like, well, you know, it's about training. And yes, we talked about nutrition, things like that, but I never once doubted, because when talking to you, and I think this is the other aspect, and this is where I think it's really interesting, working with people that have this in their mindset. They're quite bloody minded and think, no, I'm going to do this. It doesn't matter who says I can't, I'm still going to get this done. And there was never a moment in my mind when I was working with you and now working with what we're going to do in the future where I think you can't complete this.
Yep.
Because you have that ability to dig in. You have that ability to deal with things. And these are things we talked about in training. It was like, look, let's talk about nutrition, let's talk about training, let's talk about the psychology of what you're going to go through on a day-to-day basis. Even though I'm not a psychologist, having done long-distance stuff, you realize that that's quite an important aspect of being able to mentally look after yourself as well as that physicality side of things.
Huge. And I remember at the beginning talking about it, and I said what I'm going to do. So I'm going to ride 2,500 K in a week. And you're like, well, never really trained anyone to do that before, you know, but I know the principles. And if you look at the training I did, I actually, when I think of my weekends or the classic long ride weekends, I wasn't doing that much in the way of long ride weekends. The big training I did was in the gym. It was hill reps and it was winter turbo sessions.
Yeah.
I did less at the weekend. I did fewer kilometers at the weekend. I did some long rides. So I did 2 real training rides for it. 3 actually. In the summer before, just to start off, I cycled from near Stirling where I lived down to Leeds. And I did that in a sort of day and a half. Okay, that was okay. Quite tough hills going across the Yorkshire Dales, but that was okay. Then I did Dollar down to York, and then York. The next day I went York, Lincoln, Liverpool, and that was to replicate a 2-day ride. And that was less about training, but just more about comfort on the bike and how do you back up a day with another day.
Mm-hmm.
And that taught me one massive thing, which was I needed aero bars, because when you ride just on the handlebars, you just, it's so uncomfortable for that length of time. And then I did a 3-day ride from Mull in the west of Scotland, up north of Inverness, up to the northernmost point, back down to Inverness, and then back home. And again, I changed my nutrition a little bit there, got it all wrong. Instead of eating regularly, I went for every 2 or 3 hours and just felt terrible. So I was trying out things, not so much from a training point of view, but from a bike logistics, gear point of view, nutrition, etc. So I wasn't putting in hundreds of kilometers, quite the opposite. I was doing 4, 5, 6 hour rides, but not a huge number of them.
But I think when we talked about it, we were talking about it's that compounding effect of what we were doing, which is, you know, just making you robust and fit. And knowing that there were moments where we were throwing volume at you and going, look, we need to do this because you were busy at work. So we need to put these long rides in back to back so you can understand what it feels like, get your nutrition, your hydration right, your position right. And we've worked all on that, but it was just actually physically getting that together and stringing it together and understanding what it feels like to do that on a day-to-day basis. You know, there were moments in time when we said we have to put that volume in, but it was like with the time that we were given in training and work and everything else, it's like, look, by doing this, we know it gets you fit. The rest is just that mentality of getting it done day in, day out, day in, day out.
Well, I realized when I did the last training ride, and again, it wasn't a great ride because my nutrition was wrong, but I realized at least I had the strength because there's 2 climbs north of Inverness on the way to John O'Groats or Dunnet Head. One is called Berrydale, the other is called Helmsdale. And I went over them, obviously going up and coming down in the same day, which I then did later during my ride. And at least at that point, I could feel I had the strength in the leg, which is different. You know, you're not flying up them, and I'm not trying to smash it up them, but stick it in the lowest gear and just not even grinding your way up. It was just ride up it with the strength. So
And I think this is the things we talked about loads of times. It's just like pacing yourself and the ability to keep going. So it's not about smashing these events. It's far from it, in actual fact. It's just about being as super efficient as you can and trying to maintain decent pace for that efficiency.
Yeah.
So
when I was in the ride itself, so and I should say I planned the dates well in advance because Elspeth, my wife, who, as you know, was doing an Ironman the week before or 2 weeks before, so I couldn't do it the same week as her. So I planned it for the middle of July, which turned out to be the hottest week ever in Britain. So I started off in near Land's End at Lizard Point, and it was already hot. I mean, cycling up and down in Devon and Cornwall, where you've got those very enclosed roads because of the hedgerows, it was hot. So, day one I went to Devizes in I think which is in Wiltshire, and that was 350k. And again, I wasn't sure whether I could make it to Devizes, but I made it okay. Felt good. Mm-hmm. The next day I cycled to Lowestoft, which was pretty much another 350k, and it was getting really hot going through East Anglia.
This is where we had a conversation, and you and I laughed about it because we'd planned for everything, for the worst weather in the world, pacing yourself, eating, hydration, all that stuff. The one thing we didn't plan for was a heat wave.
So actually, at that point, the next day I started from Lowestoft, and I had to stop in the middle of the day it was over 40 degrees. I was overheating, but actually the road was melting. Mm-hmm. The tarmac was melting in the road, and I thought, well, if I blow my tires, I'm done. So I then had to switch to cycling during the night. And the reason I say that is because I stopped at a place called Metheringham near Lincoln, and I slept for 2 or 3 hours, and I left Metheringham about midnight. And I cycled from there to Edinburgh in a day, which I'd never done before. And that was 480 plus K, in a day. And then the next day I got up and cycled to a place called Brora, north of Inverness, which was another 450K or something. It was ridiculous. But the strength was there. It's, if you've got the ability to keep going mentally, which is the most, once you've done the training, right, and you're on the start line, it's not about fitness. The determining factors came down to 2 or 3 things. One is you have to keep going. You've just got to keep going. You have to have the mental strength to keep going. And I had a very, very clear purpose for why I was doing this. And I'd been on national television. I had hundreds of people tracking my little dot. People who were stopped people would stop me at the side of the road. I didn't realize this. I'd been on national television, I'd been on breakfast TV, I'd been on Radio 5, Radio Scotland, various things. People saw me and they started coming to the side of the road. Every day to start with, I would get 4, 5, 6, 7 people. As I got closer to Scotland, more and more, they would stop me at the side of the road. So I had to keep going. I told everyone on national television, I'm going to do this in under 7 days. So that's why when it started getting hot, okay, it's hot during the day, cycle at night. So that was the first thing. And I was lucky in that sense, very, very clear purpose and just very, very focused. Once you're in it, you're not thinking about cycling from Lincoln to Edinburgh. You're just thinking about getting to whatever's next after Lincoln. I can't, who knows? I can't even remember the place, but you're getting to York. No, you're getting to York, you're getting to Newton Aycliffe, you're getting to Durham, you're getting to Newcastle, you're getting to Jedburgh. You're just ticking these milestones off.
It's interesting, and that's the thing I was going to say. It's like when you do these big events, one of the things, 2 things that strike to mind is when you say you're going to do these things and you've talked to people about it, you suddenly realize that actually you need to get this done because you said you were going to, and it's about buckling down and making sure that you're doing all the right things all the time. So looking after yourself physically, mentally, just consistently making sure you're doing the right things. But when when you're raising the amount of money that you raised and you say you're going to do this, it's a weird thought process that goes through your mind. I actually think you suddenly almost sort of like buckle yourself down as if you're going to war. And it's like, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to finish this.
I wanted to raise £100,000. You're right. I forgot to mention.
Yes.
My son said to me, "Listen, Dad, if you're going to do that, you better raise some big cash." So we thought £100,000, and literally for the next 9 months, it didn't obsess me in the sense of it's all I could think about, but it guided my life. I was still working, running a company, had to fit that in, family as well, but my diet. My training, it all fitted in, and it had to fit in because once it's the whole thing about if you think about something in your head and you don't tell anyone, it might happen. If you write it down, it's got a greater chance of happening. But once you start telling people, then your chance of making it happen goes through the roof. And I'd told a lot of people, and I'd committed to it. And like I say, I had to raise 100,000. I'd done a lot of work beforehand, targeting companies and individual sponsors. I had 55,000 raised before I'd even turned the first pedal.
Which is fantastic.
So I'd been working hard on that one, because it wasn't about me and raising publicity for me. It was about raising money for a charity. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to raise the money to fund a researcher into the genetics of hereditary bowel cancer. So a very specific project. Mm-hmm. And, we'd identified the researcher. We knew what we could do. We just needed the money. So a very specific project. I'd raised a chunk of money before I'd even left. And, there was no way for me that I could just stop in the middle of Lincolnshire because it was too hot. Right? What am I going to say? Sorry, guys. I didn't do it in 7 days. I did it in 10 because it was really hot. No, not an option. Not an option at all. It's okay, guys. If it's too hot to cycle during the day, I'll cycle at night. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do. And it's in the middle of it. It seems very ordinary. You don't think you're doing anything strange or heroic. You're just, you know where you've got to get to. You're working it out in your head, right? Well, if I lose 7 hours here, I'm going to have to pick them up somewhere. I'm going to have to cycle through the night. If I can get back to Edinburgh, which was about 40 miles short of my target for that day, if I can make it to Edinburgh, I'm in sight. And if I can make it to Brora, that would put me back on track. So that's all you're thinking about. How do I get there? How do I manage it?
And it is just a question of just getting it done, right? And it's that mentality. So I just need to keep going. It's like, it'll happen, it'll come.
So when you stop, for instance, if you faff around, if you fanny around, you waste 20 minutes. I mean, you've just wasted 3 miles. Right? Yeah. So, and you do that 6-7 times a day, then, it's just a waste of time. So I was eating, we talk about nutrition, actually, that was an interesting one. So the second distinguishing factor in endurance races, the first one being mental sort of strength, the second one is you've got to be able to eat. And it turned out that this frame can eat. I was able to eat 8,000 calories a day and not suffer cramps, diarrhea, anything like that. And it was people look at it, what I was eating, and they kind of go, it's a bit interesting. But there was science behind it. So Elspeth was right into the nutrition and understanding it. So she and I worked a lot on that. So the night before, I would buy milk, 2 porridge pots, a banana, and, to get me starting the day. That's my, carbohydrate start for the day. Soak it overnight, put a yogurt in there, and whatever else I could find that I would fancy. So I had 2 then bars either side of my front stem, 2 bags. One of them was just full of raisins, nuts, apricots, really good high carbohydrate content. I had just chocolate bars and just comfort food in the other one. And in my 2 bottles, I had the equivalent of beta fuel. So I had carbs in one and electrolytes in the other. Mm-hmm. And one of the things so I was all self-supported. I didn't carry much. I just took the clothes I was wearing because I saw the forecast, took a rain jacket, no shoes, nothing at all, just that and tools. But I did carry powder, carb powder, because I knew I would need that. Because one of my friends in Singapore is an ultra athlete. He talked about liquid carbs. Yeah. So start the morning on porridge, fruit, snack away. And then every 2 hours, I would just do service station meal deals, co-ops, because you're on main road, you're going past co-ops or petrol. And on a meal deal, I'm looking at a sandwich, usually an egg sandwich, brown bread, easy to digest, pork pies. And this was one of the running jokes because I ate about 60 or 70 pork pies during the week because savoury. I'm not sure what it's full of goodness. It tasted great, it had enough in it, easy to transport, and then a bottle of Coke. And of course, I don't drink Coke usually, but I could drink Coke or anything at that point because I'm just burning through the carbs.
Thing is, with a Scotch egg, I mean, how many calories are in a Scotch egg? Quite a few. Yeah,
exactly.
And also from doing these events is like, if you eat enough sweety stuff, having anything savoury is a bit of a delight. Yeah. To be able to change the palate a little bit. I remember you sending me Scotch egg pictures. So
pork pies and some Scotch egg. I'm just avoiding. You couldn't do gels. You couldn't survive on gels. Your innards would just be ruined. So I tried to eat reasonably not healthily, but reasonably regularly and with a structure to it. So I would change it around. I would get sushi. I would buy the, quick coffees in a jar, in a Starbucks coffee, right? Just hose it down. Stuff that you could eat. I mean, at one point I stopped near my house here. I was just about 20 miles away. And my wife and her friends were there, and they offered me these sandwiches and stuff. And they looked away and looked back, and the sandwiches had literally gone. I was like, bloody hell. But that was it. It was like, okay, listen, lovely to see you all, but I've got to keep going. Got to keep going. So I was just eating, and I was eating, again, there was science to it. But ultimately, if you're going to have to get 8,000 calories down your neck, it's not all going to be science, and it's not all going to be great calories. It's just, I used to think of it like a steam train when you open the door of the engine. And
that's a good way.
That's what I looked at it as. It was just like that. So I was able to eat, and I was eating pretty well. And the carbs in the bottle was really important, because that gives you, easily digested carbs.
Yeah. But we talked about what you needed on that front, and then it was just a question of preference, because again, doing these things is like, you get to a point where you think, I need to eat real food. I can't be surviving off energy mixes and gels. They just don't cut it anymore.
I never got near that, because the energy mixes and the electrolytes in the bottle was really my drinks, my regular drinks. And I was changing that every 2 hours or more, actually, because it was so hot. Yeah. The other stuff was stuff I had, the fruit was my regular snacking. And my alarm, I had the bike alarm go off every half hour. So every half hour, force yourself to eat. Force yourself, because I'd done 2 training rides, and one of them I'd done the half-hour snacking, and the other I'd done the sort of 2-hour sit down at a restaurant, grab a meal, comfort food. The problem with the second one was, A, it took too much time, 45 minutes each, so I'm wasting time, and B, I was just up and down. Yeah. So I didn't have that regular energy. So that was the advantage of the 2 big training rides, to understand nutrition. And I realized it's just every half hour, eat. Anything you can, just eat fruit, bars, and because you're burning so much, you can have a Mars bar, you can have a bottle of Coke, you can just burn through it.
Yeah. If you're doing that sort of volume and you're doing it back to back to back, you can pretty much eat what you want, which is, it's like eat a Mars bar if that's what you fancy. Right. It's like you just need to get the calories in and concentrate on the carbs.
Interesting. So, I was going to say
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say the third part just links back to what we were talking earlier, because I talk about mental fortitude, the ability to eat. I mean, people describe endurance cycling as an eating contest on a bike. The third thing is you've got to have a frame that's robust, because if you're doing that amount of repetitive work, you will find weaknesses very, very quickly. And that's why the training rides on position and comfort, I had no problems at all. No problem. I had no injuries, I had no niggles, because I'd found a comfortable position with the aero bars. And the aero bars, speed was a bonus, it was comfort. But what was crucial in all of that was not just having a frame that's reasonably robust, which you're either lucky or unlucky, but it was the weight training that means that frame really is solid and tied together, particularly quads, bringing your knees together, making sure that the knee is a robust joint, because you've done squats and deadlifts and leg presses, etc. Core work, just making sure, and your lower back when you're in that position as well, really, really important. So if you look at day, what would it have been for me? Day 6, I think it was, when I went from Brora to Dunnet Head, northernmost point, back down to Inverness. I did those 2 climbs of Berrydale and Helmsdale, and I don't care what part of the country you're in, they are tough climbs. Mm-hmm. I'd already done 2,000 or something like that, and I went up them in a day and then back up them in another day. And again, I just had the strength to get up them. I didn't fly up them, no king of the mountains, but I can tell you I got up them no problem. Just head down.
But that's the whole point of what we were doing in training, was to make you super robust. Yep. It was about having that ability to be able to just turn the pedals consistently every day and get that mileage out. And so the total mileage that you did from the 4 points was?
I managed to carve off about 100 and something K just by good route planning. So I did about 2,360 or 70 K.
Yeah.
Interestingly too, if you look at my average heart rate for a 16 or 17 hour day where I'm doing 450K or 350K, my average heart rate was 111, 112. I'd found, I describe it as the slightly fast tortoise. That was my riding style. I was just able to keep going. I found a pace I could keep going at and really keep going a long way and cover long distances. So the charity had a film crew that would dot in and dot out and film me at various points. And they would consistently underestimate how far I could go. So they'd say, oh, yeah, we'll see him in whatever it is, Lowestoft. And then they'd be like, shit, he's almost there. And then they're having to floor it just to get there, because I was just on the bike 16, 17 hours a day at an average speed, probably moving speed of, I don't know, 23, 24, 25 kmh, at heart rate, absolutely comfortable in zone, and just tapping it out.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's just like when you're doing these events, it's not about being super fast all over the place. It's about being consistently, resilient on your pace. And that's what you were, Never
in the red. I mean, I was, I see the hill, you just think, okay, it's a hill, bottom gear, get up it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it's like the same thing I would say to people. So Warren, who's doing the Giro, and he's local to you, which is how we got to yeah. So he's doing the Giro right now, right?
Yep.
He's day 4 in, and he messaged me. He goes, "Oh, this is tough." And I was like, "Yeah, but you need to." I was like, "You're doing 3 weeks. You need to back it off and remember your pacing. Not everybody's doing the 3 weeks. It's just be efficient on the climbs and stop trying to think about trying to smash it like the pros do. Otherwise, you won't get to the end of it." And he's like, "Yeah, I need to back it off a little bit, because if you look at his data from yesterday's ride, he went a little bit too tasty towards the end." And that's the thing. So for you, it's like, I'm sitting in with what I know I can do, and I'm just going to let the hills come to me, and I'm going to pace it like a pro, but pace it in the way that I know I can consistently do it day in, day out.
I learned from Elspeth, who's just walked into the kitchen. I learned from Elspeth, and also I think it's just about being older, that you realise that you can't. I'm trying to do this in 7 days. If I try and push out 400k in the first day and kill myself, I'm going to lose it later. Yeah. So it was a case of, I knew if I kept a certain pace for a certain number of hours, just the maths meant that I would do it. It sounds easy, but I had to know that I could do those K in those hours. But that's what I did. I didn't smash it. I never went into the red deliberately. If I found myself, particularly in the morning, I was good in the mornings, and I found myself sometimes getting a little bit carried away, I would just have to back off and say, whoa, you've got a good tune in your ears or something. Off you go. No, let's calm down again here. Yeah. And I could feel it. I was riding, I didn't have a power meter. I rode on heart rate and feel. So, I knew approximately where I needed to be. In fact, I was much lower on heart rate than I thought I would be. I thought I'd be sitting at 125, 130. I was actually sitting around 110. That's where I found it, and just took it, kept the pace. I realized I could keep that pace, that roughly, 23, 24, 25 kmh pace.
So once you did that, how much money did you raise for the charity? So
I finished the ride in 6 days, 15 hours and 45 minutes. So I'm covered, just short of 2,400k. And raised £175,000.
That's impressive, like very impressive. Tell us a little story about you and Mark Bowman meeting and chatting, and you telling him what you were doing. He was staring at you, thinking, "Is this guy serious?"
I'd met Mark a few times, and I met him for a coffee in Edinburgh because I wanted to share the idea. And like most people, he looked at me, and people would do this. I'd say, right, I'm going to cycle 2,500 k in under a week. And they'd be like, you, yes, me. So he just looked at me and went, you realise how far that is? And I said, well, yes and no. I said, I know how far it is, but I don't know whether I can do it or not. But then we got chatting, and what he focused on is, well, why are you doing this? I said, well, I'm raising money for charity and blah, blah, blah. And then he talked about, well, have you done anything of that length before? And I said, well, I've done 275. I did 300k day at Milan San Remo. He said, oh, how long did that take you? I said, 10 hours. He's like, okay, well, that's pretty good, So we started to think, And one of the things I learned is that don't judge a book by its cover. So people would look at me and think, well, he doesn't look like a cyclist. You look like a cyclist, I would say, Simon. You get up those hills. I don't, but I still get up the hills. I just get up them slightly slower. But on Milan San Remo, for instance, you and I were pretty much level pegging for the first 200 plus K. I mean, I would arrive at the feed point and you'd be like, bloody hell, Andy, you're still here? I said, yeah. Roll along. So you don't judge a book by its cover. And Mark was great and a great support. He actually joined me for part of the ride too. And it was good because he realized that when you're riding, it can be really distracting when people join you, because you're in your own little world and you're making these mental calculations of how fast I'm going, how far will I get, blah, blah, blah. And you've got a speed you can maintain. And then all of a sudden someone joins you and they're half wheeling ahead. And you kind of feel that urge just to catch them up. And then you start getting completely disrupted in terms of pace. So Mark was just a really good companion because he's been there before. He just basically said to me, if you want to speak, I'll speak. If you don't, I won't. I said, no, I'm fine. I was good in the mornings, but afternoons, don't speak to me. I couldn't handle it.
He totally understands it. And actually, it's really interesting. From my time in Mallorca recently, because obviously I'm training to do La Jog and then my thing next year, I did 110 miles one day, 130 miles the next day, and then road ride the island. It was 190. And loads of people saying, oh, I'll come with you around the island. I'll come around with the island. And as much as I want to say yes, I was like, I don't want you to come. Yeah. I just want to go on my own. I want to be able to ride at my pace and not worry about you. And, and it's not because I think they're slower. It's because potentially they're going to be too fast. Fresh legs, all that sort of stuff. And I didn't want to feel like, I just wanted to do it on my own. And I totally get that. When you say, look, so Mark totally understands it. You understand this. It's about your pacing. When other people come and they're pushing too much or they're having to drop back a little bit, it just really throws you off your rhythm. So
people would join me and they'd say things like, where do you want to eat? And I'm thinking, I don't even want to think about that. I'll eat when I'm hungry and I'll know when I'm hungry and I'll stop. That was it. That was simple. Yeah. So you're just so focused on your goal that anything else that comes into your world is a distraction. Mm-hmm. So good meaning people try to help you and I didn't need it. It was just too much complication. All I wanted to do was ride, eat when I needed to eat. That was it. Stop when I needed to stop. That was it. And if someone was there and I wanted to chat, fine. I did have some beauties because people could track me on this tracker and it became really quite a big thing. Like I said, hundreds of people messaging me and I couldn't read the messages. I could see them coming in on my phone because I had my phone on my stem and I would record how I was feeling at the time and did various things. But one woman stopped me at the side of the road, waved, Andy, come over. And so I pulled over and she just looked at me and went, Are you the cyclist? And I said, well, yes, I am. She looked at me again and I said, what, were you expecting someone smaller? And she said, yes, I was. So there's another guy that stopped me after I think it was in Inverness I was chatting to, and I'd been up and down these two big climbs in one day. And the guy said to me, he said, oh, did you go up Berrydale and Helmsdale? I said, yeah, I went up them twice today. He looked at me and went, oh, right, you must have a good bike. I'm like, you pal, I've got good legs. Bike didn't ride itself. That was the one time I was actually almost really lost it. I was like, bike didn't ride itself up there.
It's funny what people think. So look, you did that, and that's a phenomenal challenge, right? How old were you when you did that?
55.
55. So most people at 55 would not be thinking about taking on a challenge of that nature. What's your plan? So we're working together again now with the mindset of aiming for
Transcontinental.
So with the Transcontinental, talk us through that and what's required of you for doing that event.
Yeah. So doing the ride I did last summer, 2,500 K, 7 days, unsupported. I'm looking at, right, I actually quite enjoyed it, right? Of course, when you finish, you think, I'm never going to do that again. But literally the next day, I'm realizing I actually really enjoyed that. In different ways you enjoy it. And you start to look for the next challenge. And a lot of people talk about Ride Across America, which never appealed to me because it's too structured and it's too it's too racy in the sense of teams of 1, teams of 2, 4, 8. It's head down, backside up, smash it into the van, sleep, repeat. And there's too much technology and support involved. I love the unsupported element of it. I like the fact you've got to work it out yourself when things go wrong. And there's a ride called the Transcontinental, which basically starts in Belgium, finishes the other side of Europe on the Black Sea or in Turkey or in Greece, unsupported, start point, finish point, 4 points in between that you have to go through, and the route's entirely up to you. No outside help in the sense of you can't have support vans or people waiting for you. You can buy spares, you can buy kit, but if you break down in the middle of the mountain, you can't, you can't call your friend and say, can you drive up with a new bike? You'd have to find a way to get back to a town and get a new bike or whatever it is. So it's about 4,000, could be 4,500, depending how your route planning is, kilometers. And the route's up to you. And usually you'll go through Alps and Southern Alps and down through the Balkans. So there's a fair bit of climbing, fair bit of heat. But it looks like an absolutely fantastic race. To me, not everyone's cup of tea. So that's the plan. The plan is in about 15 months' time to be in the start line in Gerardsbergen in Belgium.
So you're doing this for Fortitude again, yes? You're going to raise money for Fortitude.
I'll do it to raise money. I mean, a little bit harder to go, to raise the same amount and with the same sort of means, but we'll certainly do it. I'll always do any of these rides. I'll always do to raise money and awareness, just to make people aware of why I'm doing it and what I'm doing it for. But this is a little bit more about me. Maybe it's the wrong way to look at it, but it's a race. Right? I'm not trying. I'm pretty clear. I don't think I'll win the race because it now attracts pretty much full-time pro endurance athletes, right? Who I've sponsored, have the best of kit. And I've done a lot of reading and a lot of studying on it. And I think I can do it. But it's one of those ones where you start off, I think the first time you start off with, as I learned on my last ride, find your pace and know that it's a pace that you can finish the race at. And then where that takes you in terms of positions, frankly, is neither here nor there.
It's funny. It's like, I think taking off something of this nature, it is about riding the bike, but it's also about taking yourself on too, right? And there's part of you that, I correct me if I'm wrong, but there's always part of you that believes that it's possible, but there's also another part of you that goes, I need to be serious about my preparation for this. I can't take this on lightly. I need to make sure that I have done everything I possibly can. So when I turn that first pedal round, I feel physically and mentally ready to take whatever comes at me. Even if you're lucky enough to get a very clear run of everything, it's still a mammoth ride. And I don't know, I think it's something that sits deep into your soul after a while and go, well, I'm ready to do this.
Well, if I think about business, in business, you know what your base business is. And if you want to grow to the next level, you usually can work out how to get halfway there, but you don't know how to do the second half. And it's the same on this one, but you find a way because you've set yourself a goal and now you've got no choice. So it changes the way you think. And it's the same with my previous ride. I didn't know whether I could do it. Genuinely didn't know it. Even on at the start at Lizard Point, I didn't know whether I could do it. I'd done back-to-back 350 days. That was not bad. When I'd done 3 days, I felt terrible. So I thought, I don't know whether I can go beyond day 3, day 4. But I did. And then I'm thinking, okay, so if I can do that, then this one's is the next level altogether. You've got more climbing, more heat, more variability, more things that can go wrong. You've got gravel, you've got mechanicals. So you're adding other elements to it. And again, can I do it? I don't know. But once you set a goal, you then start training for it, preparing for it, and you start to structure your life around, how do I make this happen?
The one thing I'll say to you 100% is when we were working together for the 4 points, I knew you'd complete it. There was never a thought process in the back of my mind saying, oh, this man's never going to do this. It never once crossed my mind. With the training that you're doing, the talking about the nutrition, the understanding of what it takes mentally to deal with it, knowing that we'd put in everything that we should have done into training, I knew you were robust enough and ready to do it. actually talking to you, I understand that quiet confidence inside you, that you understand that you can do this. You just need to get your head into the game. If I think that all from getting you to that start line, I always looked and was like, there's no way this man's not going to finish this, and there's no way this man's not going to finish it in what I would term as a really confident way. And I think the same thing applies to the transcontinentalist, that you are, with everything you're doing now, so that fundamental understanding that we need to create that base of strength again and get back into that rhythm of building easy, steady volume, and then we can build on top of that. But it's that initial conversation was like, look, I need to come back and have a chat to you about coaching. I need that structure to focus on what we need to build on now, so we can just create those building blocks later on. So when I stand on that start line, again, I'm ready to take this on.
Yep.
And you're a busy man still, it's like, let's face it, you're not retired, like kicking around, you are actually running around the countryside and doing a lot outside of your training. So it's just making it super structured right now.
Well, I have just moved to Kazakhstan, which does complicate things a little bit.
A little bit.
I am running a big company out there, but actually, those things are by the by. If you've got something like that, you fit it in. You find a way to fit it in, and I would struggle if it was full time doing this. It would be too much and too much focus. So I like the fact I have to fit it in elsewhere. And, we've gone back, you and I talked, 15 months is plenty of time. We know approximately, how this works, but it's just gone back to what we're doing at the moment, gym work. And, there's plenty of hills where I live, or mountains. So, gym work, mountain rides, and then at the weekend, trying to start getting some long rides in if possible. But the most important part of it is the gym work, and it'll be hill repeats as well. So getting that strength base back is certainly what I know and will feel comfortable with. And if I have to prioritize any training, it's not going to be going out and doing a 6-hour ride.
Mm-hmm. Not right now, anyway, that's for sure.
It would be 3 gym sessions a week.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing. So, and this is why, again, working with people who are of our age, is that foundational understanding that we need to work on the elements of our physicality that we know drops out as we get older is critical, especially when you're taking on something like this. Yeah. Because, I've seen enough people who do long events who just don't have the strength to continue it. And everything that I do with you guys, so everything I did with Warren, everything I'm doing with myself, everything I'm doing with you, is focused on that, building that fundamental core belief that strength is the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
And, let's be honest, it makes you more badass on a bike.
And I think it's what I found, let's say, it's not just about the pure strength to get you up a hill. It's about tying your skeletal system together. It's bringing your body together and keeping it strong. So I go back to my rugby days. I used to rehab using bikes when I had knee injuries or knee operations. And the doctors and physio were very clear. You need great quads to keep that knee together, right? It just ties everything together, pulls everything together, keeps it strong, and helps your ligaments and various things recover, which I've injured a lot. So I'm very clear that it's that you just feel not just stronger, but you feel more put together when you're on the bike as well.
And this is something Chris and I talked about in the last podcast about strength training and why it's so important for that injury prevention and robustness. And you're bang on the money there. It has to happen. And I think again, people just don't stick it in. They just want to ride their bikes. One thing I was going to ask you is thinking about where we're at the moment and what you're going to do in the future. It's like, there are moments in time and way of training, and you're going to have to put that volume back into it, but it's not just yet. Yeah. Is there anything in particular from doing the 4 points that you're going to take over to go and do the next event?
I don't see actually changing that much. I go back to the conversation you and I had at the beginning. So Simon, I'm going to ride 2,500 K in 7 days. And you're thinking, okay, well, I've trained triathletes, I've done a little bit of long rides, but I've never done that. So you go back to first principles. You can't replicate that in training. You can't do a 7-day training ride, right? You're not going to do that. So what you're having to do is to create situations that will prepare you based on what you know for those. In this case, it won't be 7 days, it will be closer to 14 days. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there'll be any change. I think it will be, in terms of base training, go back to what I did. Physical base training will be starting off gym-based, a lot of hill reps. And those are good because they're an hour, right? And you can fit them into a busy schedule. And of course, adding volume at the weekend. So that's fine. But again, you can ride 6 hours, you could ride 10 hours, you can ride 12 hours. It's never going to prepare you for 14 days, right? So same principles apply. When you speak to people, and I read about people who've done these events before transcontinental, they don't talk about fitness training. You know, it's assumed that everyone's going to turn up in the line reasonably fit, and the pros and the better people will be much fitter. But it's things like route planning. Mm-hmm. Right? Spend an extra day on route planning versus training, because if you can save yourself all those meters climbed by taking a better road around the mountain, you've just saved yourself time, energy, etc., etc. Spend time on nutrition, and ultimately have a goal. Why are you doing this? Because it is tough. You know, I only did 7 days, and there are times when you just feel really low. And as Mark would say to me, he said, when you're feeling bad, you know it's going to get better. So cheer up. When you're feeling great, you know it's going to get worse. So enjoy it while it's there. So having that goal, understanding your nutrition, and the route planning, and having the right kit, you know, the right bike setup. So I put a new saddle on. I trained with a new saddle. I transformed my comfort. Aero bars transformed the comfort. Next time I'm going to ride with a dynamo, because one of my routines at night on this ride, and I had to have a very strict routine. I would always stay in a hotel. That was my deliberate strategy. Is I wanted to stay in a hotel because I realized mentally and physically I needed, even if it was only 3 hours sleep or 4 hours sleep, I needed a good 3 or 4 hours sleep. And I wanted to be refreshed, and I wanted a shower. So, and I knew I had to keep my kit clean and my body clean, because saddle sores is going to kill you. So I would arrive in a hotel, same thing, check in, into the room, always take the bike into the room, strip, clothes into the shower, cover them in shampoo, turn the shower on, get my charging ready. So I'm charging my battery, my lights, my phone, etc. Once that's charging, into the shower myself, get really clean, stamp all over my clothes, get the clothes clean, get my cycling kit clean, dry it off, and then sleep. And that was the same routine. So, you know, there are routines that you get into that are really important. And that, again, was one of my big learnings, is about that efficiency on the bike in terms of time, choosing to stay in hotels mentally to stay refreshed. And then just that allowed me to carry the minimum kit. But the one change I'd make this time, like I said, is I would get a front dynamo to keep my lights going, and just to avoid the need, because I carried quite a lot of charging equipment as well. So that's the one change I would make. The rest of it, I think whether you go for 7 days or 14 days, I'm saying this, I don't know, but whether you go for 7 or 14, I think the principles are the same.
I think they are, and you know, it's just about being fundamentally consistent with the fundamentals, right? It's like constantly thinking about what you need to be doing day in, day out, and if you get them right,
you know, just that simple thing of having a bike computer that beeps every half hour, just to remind you, because otherwise, you know, you can be in your own little world, but every half hour beep, got to be, and you just force yourself. Right? You're not enjoying lovely meals. You're just getting a handful of apricots or something, and you know, nuts, and just going, right, okay, eat them, and have a bar, and have a, oh, must eat, I must drink, I must drink. So that eating one, you know, fundamental, and then the rest of it, bike, like I say, the bike and the equipment and the setup, that's really important too, to get comfort.
100%.
And that was why, like I said, I did those training rides, not for physically. It was interesting to see whether I could do it, but it was more about the kit and the routine.
So when you set off and do this next year, how old will you be?
57.
And I think, again, you know, a lot of people will be like, at 57, really? But actually, I think if you look after yourself, which you do, I think in my mind,
have you seen me last night? But anyway, a bit rough this morning.
Let's not talk about that. I always think it's like, and the whole point of doing what I do is to show people as they get older that they can actually get more out of their bodies. They just have to put the work in, and a lot of people in their 50s don't. And I just think it's really inspiring when people take on these challenges and say, right, I'm gonna not only just test myself physically but mentally.
Well, Elspeth she did 2 Ironmans at the age of 54 and 55. Exactly. She only started running when she was 40. So she's the inspiration for me when I look at what she does. But in terms of age, you don't think about it in those. Frankly, the only way I think about it is I better get going, because the amount of time left is running down. So I better get going, because there's things to do after the transcontinental as well.
It's fascinating though, isn't it? It's like, you set yourself these targets, and always, so it was only 15 months away, but those 15 months tick away really fast.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. I'm going to finish the podcast with a question that I ask everybody, and I'm throwing it straight at you. So, if you could have dinner with anybody, past or present, alive or dead, who would that be and why?
That's a very good question. So right now, Garry Kasparov is well enough, because I lived 10 years in the Soviet Union, 4 countries. I lived in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Ukraine. And I love the region, living in Kazakhstan at the moment. And he is someone who has a foot in the Soviet side of things, post-Soviet side of things, understands today's politics, understands yesterday's politics, has an international view, and I would love to spend 3 hours over dinner with him talking about what's happening in the world today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Probably not many people have mentioned Garry Kasparov as an answer to that question.
In fact, I don't think anybody really knows who he is.
Oh, sorry. Garry Kasparov was the world chess champion in the 1980s. He won a really famous match against Anatoly Karpov, who was the establishment figure in Soviet chess, Russian, Slavic, backed by the party in Moscow, whereas Kasparov was Armenian Jewish, living in Azerbaijan, very much on the fringes of the Soviet Empire, the Soviet society, but was backed by the Azeri party leader, Haidar Aliyev. So it was a classic case of the outsider taking on the establishment figure and ultimately winning, and then he became an opposition figure in modern day Russia.
Wow. All right.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Well, I could have said Eddie Merckx. That would have been something easier.
Yeah. You should have said Eddie Merckx, really. Amazing. Look, thank you very much for coming on. I hope people listening in are like, wow, this guy's done some crazy things and some good things. I'm always blown away when you tell me how much money you raised to do the 4 points. I think that is a phenomenal achievement.
I think that's the biggest, and my learning from this too, it's one of those, it sounds very trite, but it starts with a goal. Once you set yourself a goal and start telling people about it, you'll find a way to do it. If you've got motivation, you'll find a way to do it. And the motivation often comes from having told people about it, because now you're committed. You're going to look silly if you back off it. And the goal, it has to be big enough to stretch you, but not so big that it's inconceivable. I couldn't have done this ride in 3 days, but it's got to be big enough to really stretch you, so that you're forced to do things differently and new things to make it happen. I didn't know whether I could do it or not, but I did, because you find a way. So it always starts with a goal. And then once you've got the goal, there's a plan. It's the same with fundraising. I targeted 100,000. I didn't know how to do 100,000. But because I wanted 100,000, you have to start to think differently. So instead of just doing a Just Giving campaign, I went out and met companies and was asking for 5,000 a pop. So I aimed to get 10 companies and individuals before I started. I had 55,000 before I was even out the door. So, and it all started just because I'd said 100,000. If I'd said 20,000, I can do that. Knew I can do that. Didn't know how to do 100. So it starts with a goal. It starts with telling people about it. And once you're committed, you're committed.
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much for coming on. That's amazing. Thank you.
And thank you, Simon, because without the training, without the base there, and that structured program, in particular, the way we thought about weights, then, you know, none of this would have happened.
Well, it's a pleasure. And it's a pleasure to help you do it again.